The halls of the United States Senate have seen many things over the decades, but few moments carry the weight of what unfolded during that fateful Judiciary Committee hearing. You are about to witness a masterclass in legal precision, where a sharp Southern mind met the ultimate political stone wall. Stick with me until the very end, because I am going to reveal the exact moment a single document turned a routine inquiry into a career-ending confrontation. I promise you will see exactly how the power of the oath can still bring the truth to light, even when someone refuses to speak. This is not just about a headline, but about the sanctity of our American institutions and the pursuit of real justice. The air inside the hearing room was thick with a tension you could practically feel through the camera lens as the cameras from C-SPAN began to roll. Most folks saw a kindly white-haired gentleman from Louisiana adjusting his glasses and leaning into the microphone with a polite smile. They saw the folksy demeanor and heard the slow, honey-toned drawl that sounds like a Sunday morning on the porch. But beneath that gentle exterior sat a Rhodes Scholar and an Oxford-educated lawyer who had spent 40 years dismantling the most sophisticated defenses in the land. He did not come to the Capitol that day to trade insults or engage in the usual partisan bickering that clutters our airwaves. He came prepared with 3 full weeks of meticulous research and thousands of pages of subpoenaed documents that told a very different story than the public narrative. While the media was busy spinning tales of political witch hunts and targeting certain demographics, the senator was focused on the cold, hard facts of the law. He had spent his nights cross-referencing marriage certificates from Minnesota with immigration records and tax filings that dated back over a decade. Every social media post and every archived family photo had been verified by forensic experts to ensure the record was absolutely bulletproof. This was a man who understood that in a court of law or a Senate hearing, feelings do not matter, but evidence is king. Across from him sat the Congresswoman, flanked by a team of high-priced Washington attorneys, ready to deploy every rhetorical shield in their arsenal. She arrived with a strategy built on deflection and accusations of bias, hoping to turn the inquiry into a circus of identity politics. Her legal team had practiced every evasive answer and prepared statements designed to flood social media with sympathetic narratives the moment things got uncomfortable. They thought they could navigate the hearing like a cable news interview where you can simply talk over the host and change the subject. But they forgot one crucial detail that changes everything for anyone sitting at that witness table. That detail is the federal oath, which carries the heavy weight of perjury laws and the potential for 5 years in a federal prison. When you are under oath, every word you utter becomes a permanent brick in the legal foundation of your own future. Evasions are documented, and silence in the face of direct questions can often speak louder than any prepared speech or clever soundbite. This was the trap that had been carefully laid by a man who had seen it all and knew exactly how to close the door. If you believe our leaders should be held to the same standards as every hard-working American, then please take a moment to comment below and subscribe to this channel for more deep dives into the truth. The senator began his examination not with a roar, but with a whisper of Louisiana courtesy that masked a razor-sharp intent. He thanked the witness for her time with a sincerity that made her legal team lower their guard just for a fleeting second. He started with the basics, establishing the ground rules of the room like a veteran pilot checking his instruments before takeoff. He needed a simple yes or no to confirm that she understood the gravity of being under oath and the consequences of deception. It was a rhythmic beginning designed to establish a pattern of cooperation before moving into the heart of the storm. When the question shifted to her public statements about the tragic events of September 11th, the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The senator played a clip of her describing the murder of nearly 3,000 Americans as a moment where some people did something. He did not yell or grandstand, but instead began reading the names of the fallen, starting alphabetically with a somber and steady voice. He asked her if she stood by that characterization while the families of the victims watched from the gallery in stunned silence. Under the pressure of the oath, she could not hide behind the usual excuses of being taken out of context. He moved methodically into the complex web of her personal history, and the allegations of immigration fraud that had swirled for years. He pulled out marriage licenses and school records from Somalia that listed the same parents for her and the man she had legally wed. The room went silent as he displayed family photos on the large monitors showing a household connection that contradicted years of public denials. Her attorneys began whispering frantically into her ear as the senator leaned back with the patience of a man who already knew the answer. He was not guessing, but was instead presenting a timeline that had been reconstructed piece by piece through thousands of hours of staff work. The climax of this section came when he asked the most direct question of the day regarding her biological relationship to her former husband. The silence that followed stretched for 90 seconds, which feels like an eternity when the world is watching and the record is open. You could hear a pin drop as the weight of the evidence collided with the reality of the Fifth Amendment protections against self-incrimination. It was the moment the public narrative shattered and the legal reality took over, leaving no room for spin or social media clapbacks. If you value this kind of accountability in our government, make sure to comment your thoughts and subscribe so you never miss a report. The investigation then turned toward a trail of paper and ink that led directly to the heart of a family business funded by political donors. Senator Kennedy opened a folder thick with Federal Election Commission reports that detailed nearly $3 million in payments to a specific consulting firm. He pointed out with clinical precision that this firm was owned by the man who would eventually become the Congresswoman's next husband. The senator did not need to raise his voice to highlight the staggering nature of these transactions occurring while a private affair was allegedly unfolding. It was a classic case of following the money to see where loyalty truly lies when the cameras are turned off. He held up divorce filings from a disgruntled spouse that explicitly named the Congresswoman as a factor in the collapse of a previous marriage. Each time the senator asked about the timing of these payments or the nature of the travel expenses, the response was a rhythmic invocation of the Fifth Amendment. It became a somber litany of silence that filled the hearing room and painted a picture that no amount of political rhetoric could erase. This was not about a person's private life, but about the potential misuse of hard-earned donor money to enrich a romantic partner. Accountability means answering for every dime spent, especially when those dimes come from the pockets of everyday Americans. The senator then pivoted to a matter of personal character that struck a chord with every grandmother and grandfather watching across the nation. He brought up a series of social media posts where the witness had used her own grandmother's suffering in Puerto Rico to score points against the administration. He revealed that when a private citizen raised over $100,000 to actually fix the grandmother's home, the money was rejected. The senator asked how anyone could put political optics ahead of the physical well-being of their own flesh and blood living in a damaged house. It was a moment that transcended policy and went straight to the fundamental American values of family and compassion. If you find it hard to believe that politics could ever get this cold, then you are not alone in your frustration with the current state of affairs. Please join our community of concerned citizens by hitting the subscribe button and leaving a comment to let us know your thoughts on this testimony. We are dedicated to bringing you the facts that the mainstream media often ignores because they find them too inconvenient for their chosen narrative. Your support helps us keep the spotlight on these crucial hearings where the truth is finally forced into the light of day. We believe that every elected official, regardless of their party, should be held to a standard of absolute transparency. The cross-examination reached a boiling point when the senator moved back to the concept of the oath of office itself. He noted that when she was sworn into Congress, she placed her hand on a book and swore to defend the Constitution against all enemies. Yet he produced evidence of her making air quotes when discussing designated terrorist organizations that had claimed the lives of American Marines and civilians. He asked her directly if she truly considered these groups to be enemies of the United States as defined by federal law. The witness hesitated as her legal team huddled once again, realizing that a wrong answer here could have massive national security implications. The senator did not let up asking if she identified more with the country of her birth or the country she was now sworn to serve. He referenced her own speeches in Somalia, where she told crowds to ask what country she was, from implying a divided heart and a hidden agenda. Under the weight of the oath, she could not confirm that she had honored her pledge to support and defend the American flag. This was the most chilling moment for many observers, seeing a sitting member of the House unable to say yes to a question about her loyalty. It was a testament to the senator's preparation that he could force such a stark admission through the simple act of asking. By the time the hearing concluded, the legal referrals were already being drafted for the Department of Justice and the Internal Revenue Service. The senator noted that innocent people usually have plenty to say when their integrity is questioned, but the guilty often find refuge in silence. He listed 37 separate occasions where the witness chose to remain silent rather than provide a truthful answer to a simple factual question. This was not a victory for one party over another, but a victory for the process of oversight that our founders designed. The permanent record now contains every evasion and every piece of evidence for future prosecutors to use as they see fit. The impact of this 4-hour masterclass in law was felt across the country within minutes of the final gavel strike. Millions of Americans who had grown cynical about government, watched as a country lawyer, proved that the truth still matters in the halls of power. It led to a swift resignation and a series of federal investigations that are still rippling through the legal system today. This story serves as a reminder that no one is above the law and that the light of truth can penetrate even the darkest corners of political corruption. We must remain vigilant and continue to demand this level of scrutiny for everyone who asks for our vote and our trust. As we wrap up this deep dive into one of the most significant hearings in recent memory, I want to thank you for staying until the end. If you want to see more accountability and more hearings where real questions get asked, then make sure you are subscribed and have your notifications turned on. Don't forget to comment under oath in the section below to show that you stand for the rule of law and the sanctity of our Constitution. We will continue to follow the legal fallout of this case and provide you with the updates that you won't find anywhere else. Thank you for being part of this journey toward a more transparent and honest America. The fallout from those 37 silences did not just stay within the marble walls of the hearing room, but cascaded into the federal agencies responsible for upholding our laws. Within 48 hours of the senator's closing remarks, the Department of Justice announced a formal opening of an investigation into the allegations of immigration fraud. This was a significant shift because it signaled that the evidence provided by the committee was substantive enough to warrant a criminal inquiry. The U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota was assigned to lead a team of experienced prosecutors who specialize in complex document fraud. They were tasked with verifying the Somali school records and the DNA links that the senator had introduced into the permanent record. For years, these claims had been dismissed by the mainstream media as mere rumors or political attacks, but the oath had changed the nature of the conversation. Federal investigators began the arduous process of subpoenaing bank records and communication logs that dated back to the period of the suspicious marriage. They were looking for the digital fingerprints that often remain long after a physical document has been filed or a social media post deleted. The Internal Revenue Service also mobilized its Criminal Investigation Division to look into the joint tax filings from 2014 and 2015. Filing a joint return with one man while being legally married to another is not just an oversight, but a potential felony under federal tax law. The state of Minnesota had already leveled a fine for campaign finance violations, but federal prosecutors were looking at a much larger scope of potential misconduct. Each year of fraudulent tax filing carries its own set of penalties, including heavy fines and the very real possibility of prison time. The forensic accountants began mapping out the flow of $2.8 million that had been funneled to the husband's consulting firm. They were looking to see if those funds were truly used for campaign services, or if they were diverted for personal enrichment. This level of scrutiny is exactly what the senator intended when he methodically built the record during those 4 hours of questioning. If you believe that our tax dollars should be protected from this kind of alleged exploitation, then please take a second to comment "accountability" below and subscribe. Your engagement helps ensure that stories of fiscal responsibility and legal integrity remain at the forefront of our national dialogue. We are committed to following every lead in this investigation because we believe that the American people deserve a transparent accounting of how their representatives behave. It is through your support that we can continue to highlight the work of those who hold the powerful to account. Every subscription helps us push back against the silence and bring the facts to the surface for all to see. Back in the Congresswoman's home district, the political landscape began to shift as the local community processed the details of the hearing. For many of her constituents, the refusal to answer simple questions about her family and her loyalty was a bridge too far to cross. A primary challenger quickly emerged who was a Somali-American military veteran with a record of service to the United States. He spoke about the importance of having a representative who could look the people in the eye and answer yes when asked if they honored their oath. The contrast between a veteran who had bled for the flag and a politician who used air quotes for terrorists was impossible to ignore. Polling data showed a historic collapse in support across all demographics within the district as the key-span footage went viral on every platform. Even those who had previously defended her found it difficult to explain away 37 separate invocations of the Fifth Amendment in a single afternoon. The local newspapers that had once been supportive began to run editorials calling for a full and honest explanation of the marriage records. The community leaders who had been the backbone of her political organization started to distance themselves as the legal pressure mounted. It was a grassroots realization that the prestige of the office had been tarnished by the shadow of unresolved legal questions. Inside the halls of Congress, the silence from her own party leadership was deafening as they realized the political cost of continued defense. The House Ethics Committee, which usually moves at a glacial pace, suddenly found the momentum to open an investigation within 72 hours. They were facing a public that had seen the evidence with their own eyes and would not be satisfied with a closed-door dismissal. The Speaker of the House gave a brief and pointed statement indicating that the ethics process would proceed without interference or delay. It was the beginning of the end for a political career that had once been touted as the future of the progressive movement. The pressure reached a breaking point 1 week after the hearing when the Congresswoman called a press conference to announce her departure. She stood before a bank of microphones with a shaking voice and a prepared statement that avoided any mention of the specific evidence. She claimed she was stepping away to focus on her family, but the timing made it clear that the legal walls were closing in fast. The resignation was the only way to avoid a public expulsion vote that would have forced her colleagues to go on the record. It was a somber conclusion to a saga that had begun with a country lawyer's meticulous 3-week preparation. As we continue to watch the legal proceedings move forward, we must remember the lesson that this hearing taught us about the power of truth. It showed that when a representative is forced to step out from behind the curtain of social media and stand under oath, the truth eventually finds a way. This is why we must never stop asking the hard questions and demanding that our leaders answer them with clarity and honesty. Please make sure to subscribe and share this video with others who care about the future of our republic and the rule of law. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on whether this level of oversight should be standard for all members of Congress. The legal community began to refer to this specific cross-examination as a masterclass in the art of the controlled inquiry. Law professors across the country started analyzing the senator's transcripts to show how a series of small and seemingly unimportant admissions can build into an inescapable trap. It was not just about the final questions, but the way he methodically stripped away the ability for the witness to use her prepared talking points. By establishing the facts of her arrival in America and the opportunities she was given, he made her later evasions look like a betrayal of the very system that had elevated her. This strategic building of a narrative is what separates a standard political debate from a true judicial reckoning. Forensic accountants who were not affiliated with any political party began to release their own independent analyses of the $2.8 million. They pointed out that the volume of travel expenses claimed by the firm was statistically impossible for a single congressional office during a non-election year. The records showed payments for high-end luxury hotels and international flights that seemed to have no connection to the legislative business of the people of Minnesota. When these numbers were laid out in a clear and easy-to-read format, the public began to understand that this was not just a clerical error. It was a pattern of behavior that suggested a total disregard for the ethics rules that are supposed to govern the conduct of every member of the House. The IRS focus intensified on the concept of intent, which is often the hardest part to prove in a tax fraud case, but is essential for a criminal conviction. However, when a person is presented with their own marriage certificate and their own joint tax filing and still refuses to explain the contradiction, it provides a clear window into their mindset. The senator's strategy of forcing those 37 silences provided the Department of Justice with exactly what they needed to argue that the deception was knowing and willful. In the eyes of the law, silence under the threat of self-incrimination is a powerful indicator that the truth would be damaging to the defendant. This is why the preparation of the evidence was just as important as the questions themselves. If you are tired of seeing politicians treat the tax code like a suggestion rather than a law, then please hit that subscribe button right now. We need your voice in the comments to show that the American people are still watching and that we still care about the integrity of our financial systems. By liking and sharing this video, you help us reach more people who are looking for the facts behind the political theater of Washington. We are committed to digging deeper into these financial records to show you exactly where your money goes when it enters the political machine. Your support allows us to maintain the independent research needed to break down these complex cases for our viewers. The cultural impact of this hearing began to manifest in a new movement that many called the Oath Initiative. Citizens across the country started demanding that their local and state representatives sit for similar public sessions under the penalty of perjury. It became a litmus test for transparency as voters realized that a politician's behavior changes drastically when they cannot hide behind a script or a sympathetic interviewer. The difference between a town hall meeting and a sworn hearing became the new standard for evaluating political courage and honesty. The senator from Louisiana had inadvertently created a new blueprint for how the public should interact with those who hold the power of the gavel. International observers in London and Paris were also taking note of how the American system was self-correcting through the use of established constitutional procedures. They saw that while the political rhetoric was heated, the actual mechanism of accountability remained rooted in the rules of evidence and the power of the subpoena. This served to bolster the reputation of American institutions at a time when many were questioning the stability of the republic. It proved that the ancient tradition of the cross-examination remains the greatest engine for the discovery of truth ever invented. The sight of a powerful official being humbled by a stack of verified documents was a message that resonated far beyond the borders of our own nation. As the federal prosecutors began to assemble their grand jury, they relied heavily on the groundwork laid by the senator's staff over those 3 weeks of intense research. They found that every lead he had mentioned in the hearing room opened a new door to additional witnesses who were now willing to come forward. The fear of retaliation that had kept many people silent for years began to evaporate once they saw that the Congresswoman was no longer untouchable. Affidavits started arriving from former campaign staffers and community members who had first-hand knowledge of the living arrangements and financial dealings in question. It was a classic domino effect where one brave person speaking truth to power encourages others to find their own voices. The legacy of this event continues to shape the way we view our elected leaders and the promises they make on the campaign trail. It taught us that we should not be distracted by the noise of social media, but should instead focus on the official records and the actions taken behind closed doors. The truth is often found in the dry pages of a tax return or the fine print of an immigration file, rather than in a viral tweet or staged photo op. We owe it to ourselves and to future generations to keep holding the flame of accountability high and never settling for anything less than the full story. The senator's quiet persistence showed us that the law is still the ultimate equalizer in our society. I hope you found this deeper look into the legal and cultural consequences of the hearing to be informative and thought-provoking. We have much more to cover as we look at the specific indictments that followed and the long-term changes to Senate oversight rules. Please make sure you are subscribed and that you leave a comment with the word "Justice" to show you want to see this case through to the end. Your participation is what keeps this channel growing and allows us to produce the high-quality content you deserve. Thank you for your time today and for being a dedicated seeker of the facts in an age of confusion. The shift from a public hearing to a closed-door grand jury marked a turning point where political theater was replaced by the cold machinery of federal prosecution. While the public was still reeling from the viral clips of the 37 silences, a team of federal agents was quietly moving through the neighborhoods of Minneapolis. They were not looking for sound bites, but were instead serving subpoenas to individuals who had remained in the shadows for over a decade. These were the people who knew the truth about the living arrangements in 2009 and the real nature of the relationship between the two individuals in question. For the first time, the fear of political retaliation was outweighed by the legal requirement to tell the truth to a federal grand jury. One of the most significant developments involved a whistleblower from within the local Somali community who provided a set of original documents that had never been seen by the public. These were not digital copies, but physical records that matched the timeline the senator had presented with such devastating accuracy during the hearing. These documents included family correspondence and community ledgers that clearly identified the familial bonds that had been denied under oath. The senator had known these people existed, and his methodical questioning was designed to create a public record that would give them the courage to come forward. It was a strategy that relied on the belief that once the first crack appears in a wall of deception, the entire structure eventually comes down. Forensic experts at the FBI also began a deep dive into the school records from Somalia that had been a central piece of the senator's evidence. They utilized advanced imaging techniques to verify the authenticity of the stamps and signatures on records that dated back to the early 1990s. By comparing these to known authentic documents from the same region and time period, they were able to confirm that the names and parental associations were not a clerical error. The senator had risked his reputation by bringing these documents into the record, and the subsequent verification proved that his 3 weeks of preparation were worth every hour spent. It showed that even in a digital age, the old-fashioned work of verifying paper records is still the foundation of a solid legal case. If you are heartened to see that the truth can still be found through hard work and courage, then please take a moment to subscribe and join our community. Your comments and likes help us amplify the stories of the whistleblowers and investigators who work tirelessly to protect the integrity of our nation. We believe that every American, regardless of their background, deserves a government that is honest and a legal system that is fair to everyone. By engaging with our content, you are helping to build a platform that values facts over feelings and evidence over ideology. Let us know in the comments if you think more citizens should be encouraged to come forward when they see wrongdoing in high places. The investigation also expanded to look at the financial ties between the campaign and several nonprofit organizations that had been vocal supporters of the Congresswoman. Federal agents began looking for a circular flow of money where campaign donations were funneled through consulting firms and then kicked back to associated groups. This is a complex form of money laundering that often hides in plain sight within the complicated world of campaign finance reporting. The senator had hinted at this during his questioning when he asked about the $2.8 million and the lack of specific receipts for travel. He was providing a roadmap for investigators to follow, knowing exactly where the most suspicious transactions were buried in the FEC filings. As the grand jury heard from more witnesses, the picture of a coordinated effort to circumvent immigration and tax laws became increasingly clear and undeniable. It was no longer just about one person's choices, but about a broader network that had facilitated these actions for years. The senator had understood that the hearing was just the tip of the iceberg and that the real work would happen in the dark, away from the C-SPAN cameras. His role was to shine the light just bright enough, to force the legal system to take notice and act upon the evidence. The resignation that followed was a direct result of the witness realizing that the grand jury was hearing things that could not be explained away by a tweet. The impact of these revelations began to change the way local voters in Minnesota viewed the concept of representation and the importance of vetting candidates. There was a renewed interest in the background and history of those running for office, with a focus on consistency and transparency. People began to ask why it took a senator from Louisiana to find the facts that should have been uncovered by the local media years ago. It was a wake-up call for the Fourth Estate and a reminder that investigative journalism is a duty that should not be sacrificed for political convenience. The hearing had effectively embarrassed the institutions that were supposed to be the watchdogs of our democracy. As we look toward the next steps in this legal journey, we must remain focused on the process and the pursuit of a final judgment. The grand jury is just one phase of a larger effort to ensure that the rule of law is applied equally to the powerful and the powerless alike. We will continue to track the subpoenas and the testimony to give you the most accurate picture of how this case is developing. The Senator's Masterclass in Accountability has set a new standard that we should all expect from our government officials in the future. It is a reminder that while the truth can be hidden for a long time, it can never be fully erased when the right questions are asked. Thank you for staying with us as we navigate the complexities of this ongoing investigation and the legal fallout of that historic Senate hearing. We are committed to providing you with the depth and context that you won't find on the nightly news or in the morning papers. Please make sure you are subscribed and have your notifications turned on so you don't miss our next update on the grand jury's findings. Leave a comment with the word integrity to show that you stand for the values that make our country great. We look forward to continuing this conversation with you as more facts come to light in the coming weeks. The aftermath of the hearing exposed a deep fracture in how information is shared and guarded in our modern age. While the independent digital world was buzzing with the details of the 37 invocations of the Fifth Amendment, the mainstream newsrooms remained curiously quiet. It was as if a coordinated effort had been launched to downplay the significance of a sitting member of Congress refusing to confirm her loyalty to the United States. They preferred to focus on the protests outside the building rather than the cold, hard evidence sitting on the senator's desk inside. This silence served as a powerful reminder of why we must look beyond the glossy screens of the major networks to find the unfiltered truth. But the silence of the big networks could not stop the momentum of the facts that had already been entered into the permanent congressional record. Digital platforms and independent journalists began to do the work that the seasoned reporters in the press gallery refused to touch. They took the senator's folders and broke them down page by page for an audience that was hungry for real accountability. They showed the discrepancies in the tax filings and the clear timeline of the marriage fraud that the senator had meticulously constructed over his 3 weeks of preparation. It was a grassroots information revolution where the people became the investigators and the truth became the ultimate viral sensation. The contrast between the professional media's narrative and the reality of the sworn testimony became so great that it could no longer be ignored by the public at large. People began to ask why their favorite news anchors were avoiding the topic of the $2.8 million funneled to a husband's firm. They wanted to know why the air quotes for terrorist organizations were being treated as a minor gaffe rather than a serious national security concern. The pressure from the audience eventually forced a few reluctant reports onto the airwaves, though they were often framed with heavy bias. This struggle for control over the narrative proved that the power of a sworn statement is stronger than any teleprompter script. If you believe that the truth should never be buried by those who claim to be the gatekeepers of information, then please subscribe to this channel and join our growing community. We are here to ensure that the facts of this case and many others like it are presented without the filter of corporate interests or political agendas. By leaving a comment and sharing this content, you are helping us break through the noise and reach those who are still being kept in the dark. Your support is the reason we can continue to analyze these hearings and provide the deep dive coverage that our country so desperately needs right now. Let's work together to make sure that accountability is not just a word, but a reality in our nation's capital. The senator's office became a focal point for this new wave of transparency as citizens from all walks of life sent in their own research and tips. His staff, already seasoned from their 3 weeks of intense preparation, began to process a mountain of new information that further corroborated the initial findings. They found that many ordinary Americans had been tracking these inconsistencies for years, but felt they had no voice until the senator gave them one. This synergy between a dedicated public servant and an informed citizenry is what the founders intended for our system of oversight. It showed that one man with a clear purpose and a stack of verified documents can change the course of national events. We also saw a significant shift in how social media platforms handled the footage of the hearing as it reached critical mass. Initially, there were reports of certain clips being flagged or buried by algorithms, but the sheer volume of interest eventually broke through the digital barriers. People were sharing the raw C-SPAN footage directly, bypassing the curated clips that were being promoted by partisan groups. The 90 seconds of silence after the question about the biological brother became the most watched minute of congressional testimony in history. It was a moment of pure, unscripted reality that no amount of digital manipulation could effectively hide from the eyes of the American people. The legal teams for the Congresswoman tried to launch a counteroffensive by attacking the motives of the senator and the validity of his sources. They claimed that the Somali records were unreliable and that the entire hearing was based on personal animosity rather than legal necessity. However, these arguments fell flat because the senator had already ensured that every piece of evidence was authenticated and verified before it hit the screens. You cannot argue with a marriage license that has been certified by a state official or a tax return that bears a person's own signature. The legal defense was trying to fight a battle of opinions against a mountain of documented facts. As we move forward, it is clear that the legacy of this hearing will be defined by the victory of transparency over obfuscation. It has set a new precedent for how congressional committees can use their subpoena power to cut through the fog of political spin. We are now seeing other committees adopt the same methodical approach, realizing that the public responds to evidence far more than they do to grandstanding. The senator from Louisiana has provided a masterclass not just in law, but in how to communicate the truth to a skeptical and weary public. The work continues, and the record remains as a permanent witness to what happens when accountability finally arrives. I want to thank you for your dedication to following this story and for seeking the truth alongside us as we uncover each new layer of this case. We have much more to discuss, including the long-term impact on the House Ethics Committee and the changes to campaign finance oversight that are being proposed. Please make sure you are subscribed and that you check back often for our latest reports and analyses of these critical events. Leave a comment with the word truth to show that you value honesty in our government above all else. Your voice is the most powerful tool we have in the fight for a more accountable and transparent America. The legal path ahead for someone facing substantiated allegations of immigration fraud is one of the most arduous journeys in the American judicial system. Senator Kennedy highlighted that the committee would be forwarding its findings to the Department of Justice for a full investigation into potential perjury and fraud. Under federal law, if a person is found to have obtained their citizenship through willful misrepresentation or concealment of a material fact, the consequences are severe. This process, known as denaturalization, is a civil proceeding that can lead to the total revocation of one's status as a United States citizen. It is a tool rarely used but exists specifically for cases where the very foundation of an individual's entry into the country was built on a lie. The senator's focus on the marriage to a biological brother was not merely for shock value, but was a strategic move to address the heart of immigration statutes. Federal law is crystal clear that marriage is entered into for the sole purpose of evading immigration laws or obtaining a green card are fraudulent and carry heavy criminal penalties. If the grand jury finds that the familial relationship was concealed to facilitate an entry or a change in status, the entire legal history of that individual comes under a microscope. Each document signed under penalty of perjury over the last 2 decades would represent a separate count in a federal indictment. This is why the senator was so persistent in demanding a yes or no answer to a question about basic biological facts. We must also consider the implications of the tax fraud allegations, which often run hand in hand with immigration schemes to create a false paper trail. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division has the authority to look back many years when there is evidence of a recurring pattern of fraudulent filings. Senator Kennedy pointed out that the witness had already been fined by the state of Minnesota for improper filings related to her personal and campaign finances. When you combine state-level violations with federal joint filing discrepancies while being legally married to another person, the legal jeopardy becomes insurmountable. Federal tax evasion and fraud can lead to decades of prison time and the complete forfeiture of assets obtained through illegal means. If you believe that the law should apply to everyone regardless of their title or their friends in high places, then please subscribe to this channel and leave a comment below. We are here to keep you updated on the progress of these federal investigations, because the mainstream media has a habit of moving on once the story gets too uncomfortable. Your support allows us to hire researchers and legal experts who can break down these complex filings and explain what they mean for the future of our country. By sharing this video, you are helping to build a movement that demands equal justice under the law for every single citizen. Let us know in the comments if you think the Department of Justice is moving fast enough in this particular case. The concept of perjury during a congressional hearing is another pillar of the legal framework that the senator was carefully constructing during those 4 hours. When a witness is under oath, every statement must be the absolute truth, and any intentional lie regarding a material matter constitutes a felony. The senator reminded the witness multiple times of the weight of her oath because he knew that the record being created would be used as the primary evidence in a future criminal trial. Even if a witness pleads the Fifth Amendment to avoid self-incrimination, the existing evidence he introduced, such as the Somali school records and family photos, remains as a silent witness. The legal system does not require a confession when the documentary evidence is as clear as a bell. The investigation into the $2.8 million paid to her husband's firm also brings the Federal Election Commission into the fold with the power to levy the largest fines in its history. Campaign finance laws are designed to prevent the personal enrichment of candidates through the donations of unsuspecting citizens who think they are supporting a cause. If it can be proven that these funds were used to facilitate a private lifestyle or to reward a romantic partner under the guise of consulting, it constitutes a massive breach of public trust. The senator's line of questioning regarding the affair and the travel expenses was a direct hit on the integrity of the campaign's financial heart. It showed that he was not just looking at one crime but at a holistic pattern of alleged corruption. The long-term impact of a denaturalization or a federal conviction would mean that any public office held would be vacated by law and the individual would be barred from future service. This is the ultimate accountability for a public servant who is found to have betrayed the very Constitution they swore to defend. The senator's work ensured that this was not just a political scandal that would fade away, but a legal reality that would follow the witness for the rest of her life. It serves as a stark warning to anyone who thinks they can use the American system for personal gain while ignoring the rules that apply to everyone else. The truth, once established in the permanent record, becomes an immovable object in the path of any political career. As the federal agencies continue their work, we are seeing a renewed interest in the vetting processes for all candidates who seek to represent the American people in Washington. This case has exposed gaps in the system that many are now calling to be closed through new legislation and stricter oversight. The senator from Louisiana has shown that one person with a commitment to the facts can spark a national conversation about the standards we expect from our leaders. We will continue to follow the paper trail and the courtroom developments to ensure that you have the full story as it unfolds. The pursuit of justice is a marathon, not a sprint, and we are committed to seeing it through to the very end. I want to thank you for your continued trust in our coverage and for being part of this important discussion about the rule of law in our republic. Please make sure you are subscribed and that you hit the notification bell so you are the first to know when the next set of indictments is announced. Leave a comment with the word law to show that you believe in a country where the rules are the same for everyone, from the highest office to the humblest home. Your engagement is what gives us the strength to keep digging and to keep reporting the facts that others are afraid to touch. We look forward to seeing you in the next update as the truth continues to come to light. The true genius of the senator's approach lay in his understanding that a congressional hearing is a battle of preparation, not just a battle of wits. While many of his colleagues were satisfied with a few minutes of grandstanding for the cameras, he had invested 3 full weeks into the minute details of the case. He had personally reviewed every single document the committee had subpoenaed, from marriage certificates to tax returns and FEC reports. This level of dedication allowed him to identify every contradiction and every suspicious coincidence where public statements did not match official records. He did not need to guess because he had already assembled a timeline spanning 15 years that served as his roadmap through the fog of deception. His strategy involved organizing over 200 questions, each one carefully designed to require a simple yes or no answer. By stripping away the ability to use complex talking points or emotional appeals, he forced the witness into a corner where only facts remained. He had anticipated every likely objection and prepared his responses in advance, drawing on his 40 years of legal experience in the courtrooms of Louisiana. Behind the folksy metaphors about fishing and common sense was a sharp legal mind that had cross-examined hundreds of hostile witnesses. He knew that if he could maintain his polite, southern demeanor, the witness would eventually underestimate him and make a fatal mistake. The physical evidence played a crucial role in this methodical destruction of the witness's defenses. The senator had arranged for marriage licenses, photographs, and social media archives to be displayed on the hearing room screens at the precise moment they would have the most impact. This was not done for theatrical effect, but to create a permanent legal record that could trigger federal investigations and provide evidence for criminal prosecutions. He understood that a video clip or a verified document is an immovable object that no amount of subsequent spin or damage control can erase. By the time he reached the most difficult questions, the witness was already exhausted by the sheer weight of the accumulated evidence. If you appreciate a leader who values hard work and factual evidence over empty slogans and political posturing, please hit the subscribe button right now. We need more voices in our national conversation that prioritize the truth and the rule of law above all else. Leave a comment with the word preparation to show your support for the kind of thorough oversight that actually produces results. Your engagement is what allows us to keep bringing you these deep dive analyses into the mechanics of our government and the pursuit of justice. By sharing this video, you help us reach others who believe that our elected officials should be the most prepared and honest people in the room. The senator's use of silence was perhaps his most effective weapon during the 4-hour session. When a witness is under oath and faces a direct, factual question, the silence that follows can be more revealing than any spoken admission. After asking about the biological relationship between the witness and her former husband, the senator simply waited, letting the clock run for 90 seconds. This period of stillness forced the American people to look at the witness and draw their own conclusions about why such a basic question could not be answered. It was a masterclass in psychological pressure that showed he was in complete control of the room and the narrative. He also utilized his deep knowledge of federal perjury and immigration statutes to ensure that every question had a specific legal purpose. He was not just looking for a headline. He was building a case that could be handed over to federal prosecutors with the instructions already written. By asking about the "some people did something" comment and the air quotes for terrorist groups, he was establishing a pattern of conduct that related directly to the oath of office. He showed that the witness's public actions were inconsistent with the solemn pledge she had taken to defend the United States. This connection between personal behavior and public duty is the heart of true congressional oversight. The metaphors he used, such as describing the Fifth Amendment as the truth's last hiding place, served to make complex legal concepts accessible to every American watching. He took the dry language of the Constitution and translated it into a moral framework that resonated with common sense and traditional values. This approach made it impossible for the witness to hide behind legal jargon or technicalities, because the senator had already defined the terms of the engagement. He proved that an Oxford-educated lawyer could still speak the language of the people when the truth was on the line. The contrast between his clarity and the witness's evasion was the defining image of the entire hearing. As we look back on those 3 weeks of preparation and the 4 hours of testimony, we see the blueprint for future accountability. It shows that the tools of our republic are still effective when they are wielded by those with the skill and the will to use them. The senator's legacy will not just be the resignation he forced, but the standard of excellence he set for every member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He reminded us that the pursuit of justice is a professional calling that requires the highest level of intellectual honesty and moral courage. We are all better off when our leaders take their duties as seriously as the simple country lawyer from Zachary, Louisiana. Thank you for your continued interest in this series as we approach the final chapters of this historic event. We have a few more sections to go as we summarize the long-term impact on our national security and the future of congressional hearings. Please make sure you are subscribed and that you leave a comment with your favorite moment from the senator's cross-examination. Your support is what keeps us going and allows us to provide this level of detail for our community of seekers. We look forward to seeing you in the next part of this deep dive investigation into the truth. The shockwaves from the hearing room quickly reached the offices of the witness's closest political allies, creating a wave of panic that even social media could not contain. For years, the group known as the Squad had presented a unified front, relying on the shield of identity politics to deflect any criticism of their members. However, as the details of the 37 Fifth Amendment invocations began to dominate the news cycle, that shield started to crack under the weight of the evidence. While some members attempted to rally around her with tweets about Republican witch hunts, their words felt hollow against the backdrop of verified marriage licenses and tax documents. The American people were no longer looking at a political narrative, but were staring directly at a mounting pile of legal evidence that demanded a response. Inside the halls of the House of Representatives, the atmosphere was one of quiet distancing, as even her Democratic colleagues realized the toxicity of the situation. Leadership figures who had previously offered vocal support suddenly found themselves unavailable for comment or gave brief statements about letting the ethics process run its course. It is one thing to defend a colleague over a controversial tweet, but it is another thing entirely to stand by someone who cannot confirm their loyalty to the country under oath. The senator's methodical approach had made the controversy too well documented for any serious politician to ignore without risking their own reputation. This gradual isolation proved that in Washington, the only thing more powerful than an alliance is the instinct for political survival. The most telling sign of this shift was the emergence of primary challengers from within her own community who felt that their voice had been hijacked by personal scandals. These were individuals who had seen the evidence and decided that the district deserved representation that was not constantly mired in federal investigations. They spoke of a need for integrity and a focus on the actual needs of the people rather than the national spotlight and the drama of the hearing room. The senator had inadvertently empowered these local leaders by providing them with the facts they needed to make a case for change. It was a reminder that true political power comes from the trust of the people, and once that trust is broken by a pattern of deception, it is nearly impossible to rebuild. If you believe that no politician should be able to hide behind their peers when the truth is on the line, then please subscribe to this channel and join our community. We are dedicated to showing you the real stories of how our government functions when the cameras aren't focused on the grandstanding. By leaving a comment and sharing this video, you are helping us maintain a platform for accountability and transparency in a time of great confusion. Your support is what allows us to keep tracking these political shifts and reporting on the consequences for those who forget who they serve. Let us know in the comments if you think more members of Congress should face this kind of scrutiny from their own party. The House Ethics Committee found itself in a position where it could no longer sit on the complaints that had been gathering dust for several years. The sworn testimony provided a new and undeniable foundation for a formal inquiry that moved with unusual speed for a congressional body. They began reviewing the same documents the senator had used, but with the added authority of a House investigation that could lead to censure or expulsion. The witness was now facing a pincer movement of legal pressure from the Department of Justice and ethical pressure from her own peers. It was a situation where the only remaining move was to retreat before the full weight of the House of Representatives was brought to bear in a public vote. We also saw a significant change in the way international organizations and foreign media outlets covered the story as the resignation became imminent. They began to look at the case as a cautionary tale about the importance of vetting and the dangers of allowing personal ambition to override the rule of law. The senator's masterclass in accountability became a reference point for journalists around the world who were interested in the American system of checks and balances. It proved that even in a highly polarized environment, the basic requirements of truth and loyalty still hold a central place in the American Republic. The story was no longer just about one person, but about the enduring strength of the institutions that our founders established. As the final days of her tenure approached, the legacy of the 37 silences became a permanent part of the political landscape. It served as a warning to future candidates that their past actions and financial dealings would eventually be subject to the light of day. The senator's 3 weeks of preparation had created a standard of oversight that the public would now expect from every major hearing in the future. He showed that a single well-prepared senator can achieve more for the cause of justice than 1,000 viral tweets or partisan speeches. The truth has a way of outlasting the noise, provided there is someone with the courage to dig for it and the skill to present it. As we look toward the final summary of this historic event, we can see that the pursuit of accountability is a vital part of maintaining our democracy. It requires a commitment to the facts and a willingness to follow the evidence wherever it leads, regardless of the political cost. The senator from Louisiana reminded us all that the law is a jealous mistress that demands absolute honesty and integrity from those who serve it. We are grateful for his dedication to the truth and for the example he set for every public servant who will follow in his footsteps. The record is now clear, and the path to justice is open for all to see. Thank you for your continued support as we bring this long and complex story to its conclusion in our final installment. We have one more part to go, where we will look at the final legal outcomes and the message this sends to the next generation of American leaders. Please make sure you are subscribed and that you leave a comment with the word accountability to show your commitment to a transparent government. Your engagement is the lifeblood of this channel and allows us to continue our work of uncovering the facts for our dedicated viewers. We will see you in the final part of this investigation into one of the most significant moments in Senate history. The final chapter of this historic saga began not with a roar, but with the quiet closing of a federal investigation that confirmed what the senator had suspected all along. As the Department of Justice finalized its indictments, the American people were reminded that the gears of justice may turn slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. The 37 invocations of the Fifth Amendment remained as a permanent stain on a career that had once promised a new direction for the nation. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about the dangers of thinking one is above the laws that govern every other citizen. It proved that the Constitution is not just a piece of paper, but a living shield that protects the Republic from those who would undermine its sanctity. Senator Kennedy returned to his duties in Louisiana, rarely grandstanding about the result, but his silence on the matter spoke of a job well done. He had shown that a country lawyer with a deep respect for the rules of evidence can dismantle the most sophisticated political defenses ever devised. His 3 weeks of preparation became the gold standard for future congressional oversight, proving that facts are the ultimate equalizer in a free society. The record he created will be studied by law students and political scientists for generations to obtain a glimpse into the art of the discovery of truth. It is a reminder that the truth does not require a loud voice, only a steady hand and a clear conscience. The legacy of this event has sparked a renewed sense of civic duty among Americans who had previously felt disconnected from the happenings in Washington. But people are now more aware than ever of the importance of the oath and the gravity of the statements made by their representatives. There is a growing demand for a return to the values of honesty, loyalty, and transparency that were once the hallmarks of American public life. This shift in public expectation is perhaps the most significant result of those 4 hours in the Senate Judiciary Committee room. It has revitalized the idea that we, the people, have the right and the responsibility to demand a higher standard from those we elect. If you believe that this story is a testament to the enduring strength of our American system, then please subscribe to this channel and share your voice with us. We have journeyed through the details of this case together to ensure that the facts are never forgotten or buried by the passage of time. Leave a comment with the word legacy to show that you stand for the preservation of our constitutional values and the rule of law. Your support has been the driving force behind this series, and we are honored to have you as part of our community of seekers. Together, we can continue to hold the light of truth high against the shadows of corruption and deceit. As we look to the future, we see a new generation of leaders who have taken the lessons of this hearing to heart. They understand that a political career built on a foundation of lies is a house built on sand that will eventually be washed away by the tide of accountability. The senator from Louisiana has shown them the way, proving that integrity is the most valuable currency a public servant can possess. The story of the 37 silences will serve as a permanent marker in the history of our republic, reminding us all of what is at stake. It is a call to remain vigilant, to stay informed, and to never stop demanding the truth from those who lead us. The final legal outcomes, including the record-breaking fines and the criminal charges, have sent a clear message that the American legal system still has teeth. It has shown that the protections of the Fifth Amendment are a right, but they are also a signal that the truth is being hidden. We must continue to support the investigators, the whistleblowers, and the public servants who risk everything to bring the facts to light. This case was a victory for every American who believes in a fair and just society where the rules are the same for everyone. It is a victory that belongs to you, the informed citizen, who refuses to accept anything less than the full story. I want to thank you one last time for your incredible support and for staying with us through every part of this deep dive investigation. This channel was created for people like you who value substance over soundbites and evidence over empty rhetoric. Please make sure your notifications are on because we have more investigations in the works that you will not want to miss. We will continue to follow the stories that matter, providing the context and the depth that you deserve as a guardian of our republic. Your commitment to the truth is what makes our work possible, and we look forward to seeing you in our next report. The sun has set on this particular chapter, but the lessons learned will shine bright for years to come in the halls of the United States Senate. We have seen what accountability looks like, and we have seen the power of a single individual to make a difference. May we all carry that spirit of inquiry and that dedication to the truth into our own lives as we work to build a better future. The truth is out there, and as long as there are people willing to search for it, the light of our republic will never grow dim. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.